Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our MOS webinar. It's the first of all. I would say I hope you all are well and healthy, because in the current circumstances, it's not for everybody very easy to follow. But I'm very happy that so many participants will follow us, and I also would prefer to meet you in Brussels in person. But I think we are very happy that we have this opportunity to do it by a webinar here, because today is a very important day. The first is we will present the DIP, the detailed implementation plan, the working plan for the Motorways of the Sea. And the second, today at the 1st July, the new EU presidency will start. So we have two historic dates. But seriously, I'm very happy that we will come together today. We have a very strong program. Therefore, I will not speak too much, but what I will say is we try to take your interest for the DIP, which I just released to the transport ministers and to the entire maritime scene. So it's very current, and I think we have today a good chance to get an overview, but also to speak with the different stakeholders or different group of stakeholders. And what I also would say, since I get the mandate as European coordinator for the Motorways of the Sea 2 years ago, I can only say there were very rich and very engaging years. And I think we had a very good process. Thank you very much for you all, for your inputs, for your statements, for your comments in such a process, because that's what we will try to do, is to lay out the future of the maritime European space, which will be added to the TEN-Ts. It's not only the Motorways of the Sea, it's a real maritime dimension for the TEN-T, which we try to create. The agenda for today is twofold. In the first part, I and my team wish to give you a short insight in the DIP. And it's not so that we can show all, but what we try to do is to get your interest, and then we can deepen it during a process, because today is the start of this process. It's not the end. So we try to discuss together. And what I see is we have in a second part, like a discussion, the different views, the view of the views which is necessary in the view of the ports, of the comprehensive ports, the shipping lines, or the terminals. All that what we want to bring together. And we also will speak in the first part about the legislative driver and how CEF supports such a very ambitious plan, which we try to discuss with you today. The Commission plans to present a legislative proposal by summer 2021 to the TEN-T revision. For us, it's a huge chance to give the maritime approach inside the TEN-T a new drive, and that is what I try to give us as a approach to all of us, to mobilize our brains and to rethink MOS in such a context. What we need is a European maritime smart, seamless, and, which is very important, sustainable European space. So you see this agenda for today. I will not lose too much time, because we have to be very, very strong to this timeline, and therefore I will give the floor now to Alexio Pico. He will give us some technical instructions, and please, Alexio, take the floor. And
thanks a lot, Professor Bodevik, and also from my side, a very warm welcome to everybody. Just a very quick instruction on how to ask questions, because of course we are too many to interact on voice. So you have on your panel, you have the tab questions, so you could type your questions, and whenever you want. We are going to have a Q&A at the very end of the meeting, so therefore you could type your questions irrespectively of the session. So whatever is the subject, is the first part of the session on the presentation of the DIP, or later related to the so-called roundtable and the different presentations we have this morning. So feel free to type your questions whenever you want, and we will take care. So this is the only, let's say, instructions we have. And after that, I will pass the floor again to Professor Bodevic, and we can really now dive into the topic of the day with the presentation of the short introduction, let's say, to the Motorways Sea detailed implementation plan. So, Professor Bodevic, the floor is again yours.
Yes. So we will come. So we will come to the first point, the presentation of the Motorways of the Sea detailed implementation plan, which is our working plan. And I think what is very important that we have 3 development pillars for the creation of this sustainable, seamless, and smart European maritime space. What I want to say here is we have the decision to get a Green Deal until 2050. That is a huge approach. It has a lot of challenges, but it has also the chance to build a sustainable transport system in Europe, be an example for the worldwide discussion for this. The Green Deal needs a maritime engagement, a more stronger maritime engagement. If we really want to ship from road to sea, then we have to create a system which is smart, which is seamless, because that is what we have to do. But all in all, we have to create a green transport system, and that is a huge challenge for all of us. Next slide, please. If you see this circle of the future MOS, then you see in the top the sustainability. You know, decarbonization until 2050. We also discuss about alternative and non-fossil fuels. The next is we need onshore power supply in the ports. And last but not least, we need a system which gives incentives to such. That is what we call eco-incentives. Coming to the part of seamless, then it's a question of connectivity. We have on the one hand the core network corridors, and then we have core and comprehensive network in a good approach, in a good cooperation. And what we also look for are the outermost regions of Europe, the islands and the peripheral regions. And that is also part of our studies, the neighboring countries. We will not get all the transport goods with road traffic. We want to shift it, and therefore we have a lot to do in this field. And the next part is smart, the interoperability. What we try to get a transport flow which works, which is database, which is highly digitalized, and what we need is also the sea traffic management in this part we have to discuss about. Next slide, please. On this map, it shows that the 10T corridors in the different colors have to get a very strong maritime leg. And you can see that we have different approaches. We have a lot of connections, ro-ro connections, perhaps sometimes 28 departures per week. But we can also find new solutions, and therefore we have also a demand question, and we can create a higher demand for short sea shipping also in the sea basin, which is also part of that, what we try to do. So we want, in the 10T revision in 2021, to extend and to complement the 10T network with a very strong maritime leg. And we also want the connection I had described before. So it's a lot to do. And I think in this detailed implementation plan, you find a lot of questions and a lot of answers. So in a common process, we can try to force this, and we can get a Green Deal, also what we try to drive. The next, please. And then I want to take over to Alexio. He will also describe the financial system which is necessary for this process, the investment priority needs. Alexio, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much again, Professor Bodevic. So in the next 3 slides, we are presenting some bullet points about the 3 pillars. Again, as already explained by Professor Bodevic, the intention today is not to give you the full picture, because it's a document that you can download, and it's already available, and it is a huge document, so you can read through. So the idea is to really give you some hints about the 3 different pillars, and then also some reflections on how the DIP is structured in order to make your reading easier. In terms of sustainability, that's the first pillar. In the DIP, you will find some investment priorities and needs that are related to the different possibilities of sustainability when we talk about maritime transport. And ship propulsion and efficiency is the first one, where we have a very clear understanding that we have already alternative fuels available, but we have also a midterm priority that is set at European level on non-fossil fuel, and also long distance capability, by the way. So LNG is a solution, is still a solution, but LNG is a fossil fuel. So we should look also to other fuels such as synthetic methane or bio-LNG. Short side power supply is an important part of this sustainability pillar, and it will be supported, such as also in a way support ports to renew their energy mix, let me say, with a good efficiency coming from not only from fossil fuel, but moving from fossil fuel to renewable energy sources. And this is another way to see how in the near future projects that will integrate transport and energy as 2 dimensions of the trans-European networks will be for sure quite supported. Resilience is a key word that we know already for many reasons, and so it's climate adaptation for sure, but especially in exposed regions, but not only. It's a matter also to improve concerning other kind of resilient, let's say, causes and solutions. And last but not least, eco incentives. For the ones of you that followed also the work done last year, we had a specific seminar in Rome about how to finance MOS, and eco incentives were presented as a tool together with other financial tools, specifically to support the maritime transport dimension of the TEN-T, but with a clear understanding that those incentives should reward environmental merits. That should be a very clear understanding. The next one is about the connectivity, that is the seamless part. We see that we have to remove still some bottlenecks in some loading operations between vessels and internal modes. Again, the support to direct interlock connection, preferably, but not only by rail and inland waterways, and the connection to multimodal terminals will be one of the priority, together with the already mentioned by Professor Bodevic traffic management and optimization of the port codes, where digitalization there is really making a step further, but still not largely available in many European ports. A clear focus is also on the development of maritime links with third countries. This is particularly true for a couple of regional sea basins, such as the Mediterranean Sea, as you can understand, but also the Black Sea, but not only. So there is a clear understanding that the link with third countries, such as connectivities and territorial cohesion with peripheral regions and outermost region and islands, should be supported as a priority. And as a particular case, this time only for the Northern Baltic, is ice breaking as an important element for the maritime transport connectivity in that sea. The last one about interoperability, the smart side is, as you clearly understand, is largely related to digitalization. So we have a clear understanding that we need to boost interoperability between the various stakeholders and data sharing systems, but this should be in line with the approach already defined by the Digital Transport and Logistics Forum, specifically the so-called federated network of systems approach. Still, we are looking to efficient customs operation. Many things have been done, but still we can do more things in terms of also integrating a number of checks and procedures, not only coming from customs, but also from other authorities in a unique system, with also in line with the implementation of the European customs policy.
Ok? Lupi, siamo riusciti.
Sorry, can you mute your micro? Sorry. The next point is about European Maritime Single Window Environment. You know that now we have a regulation in place that is overcoming the Directive 65 on reporting formalities. So the new regulation is changing the approach towards the reporting formalities themselves, and this will be also part as an integration of the as a key element of the maritime transport dimension, meaning the motorway, the sea, the coherent and harmonized implementation of this regulation and the related national single windows, maritime single windows. Trade facilitation, so when we talk about digitalization, it's not only administrative things, but it's in general logistic and trade facilitation. And you know, because we have been talking about that several times, how much maritime transport is important for internal and external trade. Therefore, trade facilitation, digitalization are key elements, such as digital technology to streamline logistics and speed up cargo checks. This is partly related to the previous points, but also information on under key clearance and hydrographic surveys in specific sea basins. And again, the sea traffic management and real-time vessel traffic monitoring should be further developed for a number of reasons that are related not only to smart, but also, of course, to safety and security. These are just some, snapshots about the DIP. As a last slide from my side, I want to explain a little bit the logic of the DIP in terms of the structure of the document, the logic of the document, in order for you to understand it. Because, of course, in the DIP, there is much more than these three pillars and these bullet points. First of all, there is the market, an in-depth market analysis where we have traffic flows per sea basin, and also we have done that based on a full understanding of a number of data and analysis of a number of data and KPI on ports, on all ports, core and comprehensive ports, 335 core and comprehensive ports of the Trans-European Network for Transport. Then the logic to arrive to the pillars and the investment priorities is based on 4 blocks. Existing most projects and previous DIPs, as you have seen, the pillars are in a logic of continuity. They are not totally reinventing the wheel of destructuring what's done already by previous coordinators. So there is a certain continuity. And of course, we take care of the existing most projects, specifically the most successful one. The legislative drivers, we have many in all the different pillars and different topics. We have many legislative drivers that, of course, they are influencing the maritime transport as a whole. In my brief presentation, I mentioned a couple of them, such as the European Maritime Single Window Environment. Of course, the revision of the Directive of Alternative Fuels is another one. And in the document, you have the full picture with many more. Emerging trends, we need really to take care of what is emerging, not only in terms of innovation technologies, but it's really, let me say, also industrial trends in a way. You will see that in this DIP there is an analysis, or at least a focus on hydrogen that is at the industry level is now coming into a more, let's say, relevant role in the different industries, not only in maritime, of course. And very important, stakeholder needs and requirements. We did, Professor Bodevi did a very large consultation with stakeholders. I think that having the privilege to work in this DIP as it was in the past, in the last one, I've seen this time really from all the stakeholders and member states, new enthusiasm in a way for maritime transport. And this is reflected in really a huge number of inputs and comments to this document. So This is really, really largely discussed with stakeholders, not with, let's say, different kind of consultations. We had three regional, three workshops last year. We are planning a number of workshops also this year to follow up, of course, in a different form. But nevertheless, this is an important point. This to achieve what is the DIP pillars and investment priorities. At the same time, the second second side of the DIP is how we have evaluated and calculated possible infrastructural investment needs in the maritime transport. And this is based on the concept of the adequacy that was already a little bit shaped in the last DIP, and it is again a difference between motorway of the sea and the core network corridors, where we have the concept of compliance, because the core network corridors should be compliant to the regulation. The concept of compliance is not in the regulation 1315, but for this reason we have shaped this concept of adequacy and setting different thresholds and criteria, and to understand how much the European ports are adequate to a certain level of maturity in the different pillars. And this is reflected in the DIP in a gap analysis per sea basin, where there is let's say an elaboration of how the different pillars are let's say covered in the different sea basins. In order to do the what? In order to come to what could be needed in terms of investments to fulfill this, to cover the gaps. That is the logic that you could find in the DIP. And at the very end, it's the most important part. Priorities on one side, infrastructure and investment needs on the other side. Okay, we need money to do that, that's for sure. And as one of the very key points of the mandate of Professor Bodevik is to have, to try to give as much as possible a large number of tools and instruments to support motorway of the sea. That is why in the DIP, also following one of the workshops we had last year, specifically the one in Rome, we have elaborated the possible financing mix to support the motorway of the sea projects. And just to not to anticipate, but because there is a specific presentation from Ania on that, but of course in the DIP we have also in an analysis, an in-depth analysis of previous MOS projects in terms of investments done, investments created, and some related outcomes and impacts on the maritime transport. So that is all from my side. It is just to, in a way, facilitate the reading. That's the aim of my presentation today. I hope you will enjoy the DIP in the reading of the DIP, and I will again pass the floor now to Professor Bodevik to continue the session and introducing the next speaker. So thanks a lot. By now, please type your questions whenever you want, again on your tab questions, and I'll come back later for the session on the so-called roundtable with the different stakeholders. Thanks a lot. By now, Professor Bodevik, the floor is again yours.
Professor Bodevik, please open your microphone. Thank you.
Yes, sorry, I was starting without audio, but thank you very much for Alexio and his team of consultants for the stop, which are a very good base for this DIP. What I want to say is, you have heard that Alexio said that the DIP based on a study of emerging trend of the maritime sector. And I think that's very helpful. We have to know it, we have to see what will happen, and we have to force the positive trends. But it's not only this, it's also the legal drivers. And therefore, I will thank the Maritime Division of the DG Move for their support. Without them, I think this paper would not be so good as it is. And thank you very much because you were deeply involved in this process. I think Eleni Asterio and Szymon Osislovsky will now represent just the part of the legal drivers in this and the new priorities of the MOS DIP underlying by a study. And therefore, if we see the European Green Deal, of course, it's the overarching guiding principle of all legal drivers. And I think it's good to have you here to us in this webinar to show what will happen on this base. So, Eleni, I will give you the floor, and later on, you will give the floor to Szymon.
Thank you, Professor Budevic, and thank you for the opportunity to participate as a speaker to this webinar. Good morning to all. Together with my colleague Szymon Osislovsky, we will present the maritime transport and logistics initiatives of our directorate. The new Commission has set its main priorities, aiming at turning the economy into a more efficient one. In this context, we can mention in principle the Green Deal communication, Europe Fit for Digital Age, and further support for economy, where we need to mention also the recovery plan because of COVID-19. Next slide, please. And again, next, thank you. Leading principles in that respect are sustainability. The Commission has already started to transform the economy, aiming at achieving climate neutrality. Digitalization, where a digital transition is one of the key aspects in order to transform the Union into a modern digital society. Resilience, through large-scale financial support to reforms and investments, focused also on the green and digital transitions, the Union will be more resilient through the job creation and sustainable growth. Competitiveness, all the above will help Europe to respond to challenges and become more competitive. Next slide, please. One of the key initiatives in achieving sustainability is the European Sustainable Shipping Forum, the SSF, which provides a platform for a structural dialogue, exchange of technical knowledge, cooperation and coordination between relevant maritime industries stakeholders, member states authorities and the Commission. The aim of the SSF is to address the environmental sustainability challenges confronting the EU maritime transport sector. Next slide, please. Under the SSF umbrella, there are currently 4 subgroups. The first one is the subgroup on sustainable alternative power for shipping, tasked with assisting and advising the Commission on issues related to the development and deployment of alternative power solutions for shipping, including matters on alternative sustainable law and zero carbon fuels and propulsion methods. A subgroup on ship energy efficiency, tasked with assisting and advising the Commission on issues related to the improvement of ship energy efficiency, focused on improving energy efficiency of ships by means of mandatory measures. Subgroup on waste from ships, port reception facilities and ship source pollution, tasked with advising the Commission on issues related to the implementation and operation of the revised directive on port reception facilities for the delivery of waste from ships, as well as on the possible revision of the directive on ship source pollution. And subgroup on air emission from ships, the mandate of which is almost finished. Next slide, please. Another initiative in this framework is the EU Fuel Maritime. Transport accounts for a quarter of the EU's greenhouse gas emissions and still growing. The Green Deal seeks a 90% reduction in these emissions by 2050. Waterborne contribute to 13.4% of the transport emissions, resulting mostly from international maritime transport. This is where the EU Fuel Maritime Initiative enters, aiming at reducing emissions from maritime transport by accelerating the uptake of sustainable alternative fuels and propulsion technologies in operation and at berth. Next slide, please. This initiative will be complementary to existing supply-side measures by creating demand, therefore facilitating investments and mobilizing the production and deployment of sustainable alternative fuels in maritime transport by providing incentives. It will also provide greater certainty to the sector by setting a clear pathway for decarbonizing the current marine fuel mix and also avoiding carbon leakage, especially for ships bunkering outside the EU. Next slide, please. Another way to decarbonize the sector would be to fully exploit the existing technologies and infrastructure by using those fuels and power technologies which will significantly reduce emissions. It will also complement the work on energy efficiency pricing and will be interrelated with the revised Alternative Fuels Directive and Renewable Energy Directive. Next slide, please. Another important initiative is the EU taxonomy. The EU taxonomy is a tool for the sustainability proofing and monitoring of investments to be financed for both market-based instruments and public financing schemes, such as the future InvestEU regulation and European Investment Bank's lending policy. Therefore, EU taxonomy is a list of activities that are considered environmentally sustainable for investment purposes. Taxonomy regulation was adopted by the European Parliament on the 22nd of June and will enter into force on the 12th of July. In order to meet the environmental challenges, 6 environmental objectives were listed under the EU taxonomy, which are climate adaptation, climate mitigation, sustainable use and protection of water and marine resources, transition to a circular economy, waste prevention and recycling, pollution prevention and control, and protection of healthy ecosystems, together with the do not significantly harm criteria. At this stage, the first delegated act is being prepared, the revision of which is foreseen for the end of 2021. In the context of EU taxonomy framework, maritime shipping will also be included. Next slide, please. We are currently at the stage of an ongoing study, which will enable us to define a detailed list of economic activities in the maritime sector, establish technical screening criteria for the economic activities, evaluate the necessity and cost of monitoring, conducting a market study, and define conditions for developing green bonds in the maritime shipping sector. So now I will give the floor to my colleague Simon Osislowski, who will give you an overview of our digital initiatives. Thank you very much for your attention, and we will have later on the chance to discuss possible questions.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Szymon Ościsłowski. I'm working with Nelly in the same unit, in the policy unit, and I would like to thank Professor Bodewik, Zilke, Alexio and his team for the excellent collaboration to align the maritime policies and logistics policies with the MOS detailed implementation plan. I really appreciate the collaboration. It's fantastic. So I think in the presentation of Alexio before, there were many elements which I would like to cover in my part of the presentation. but perhaps I will add some further details. I will start with the European Maritime Single Window environment. Next slide, please. I'm sure that many of you are perfectly aware about the context and the rationale of this regulation, which was adopted last year. Basically, we would like to create a common reporting and harmonized reporting environment for ships calling in the EU ports. Previously and still currently, there's a set of national single windows throughout the Europe, which are not necessarily interconnected and interoperable, which makes ships to report several times the same information.
It seems we are experiencing some technical issue from Mr. Oshizlovsky. Please, let's just wait. Okay, here you are.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So you didn't hear me at all?
Just the last few seconds.
Okay. Because okay. So basically, the regulation on European Maritime Single Window environment entered into force last year. Now and previously we had a set of national single windows, not interoperable, not interconnected. It created a lot of administrative burden for ship operators, for the industry. Therefore there was a need to take an action at the EU level. Next slide, please. As I said, you are probably very much aware about the content of this regulation and the objectives. I will perhaps address the timing, which is quite important. So we foresee that the full application of the regulation will be in 2025. By this time, there will be a number of specific delegated and implementing acts addressing the technical elements of the EMSWE. And the central point probably would be the common data set, which would be really common for all the reporting formalities in various EU countries. Next slide, please. The regulation on electronic freight transport information is very much complementary to EMSWE. It addresses the cargo-related information, but in the hinterland. So in this sense, both regulations are very much complementary. FT would be a kind of revolution in the current system of reporting from businesses to administration, because it will require from member state to accept information related to cargo in electronic form. Basically, if a truck driver, for example, goes from one country to another and it's stopped by a police or road inspection, this truck driver can show a smartphone with a QR code, for example, which can be scanned by the inspector or a policeman, and then this person gets an access to the database, certified database and secured database. And then it can get all the necessary information based on certain access rights. So this will be kind of pull mechanism also. So this will relieve a lot of administrative burden for the economic operators. As I said, the regulation of FT is complementary to EMSWE, and it's a little bit, of course, differences because it addresses the hinterland. EMSWE addresses the ports related information, and also EMSWE is a little bit broader in the scope. It's not only covering the cargo related information, but also other elements which are supposed to be reported in the ports. Next slide, please. As you can see, the implementation of FT is very similar to EMSWE. So in this sense, also both regulations are complementary. There will be a set of implementing a delegated act addressing the technicalities, including the common data set, which will be coordinated also with the data set of the European Maritime Single Environment, so that both, let's say, pieces of legislation are consistent. Next slide, please. Finally, I would like to mention the Digital Transport Logistics Forum, which is, let's say, so-called mother of FT, of this regulation. This is similarly to ESSF, a platform of cooperation between the Commission, the Member States, and also the industry stakeholders as regards the digital transformation of transport and logistics. It is very useful expert group, and it is the first expert group, cross-modal expert group, so covering all the modes of transport. Among its achievements, apart from FT preparation, because it delivered a lot of recommendations and expertise as regards FT, there is also the concept of digital corridor information systems, which was also mentioned by Alexio in his presentation before. Next slide, please. And this is about the so-called, how to say it, Internet of Logistics. So, for example, if a user, a company wants to enter this environment for data sharing, this user needs only to connect once and use any type of service which is existing on the digital market. So basically, it aims at interconnecting all the systems of data sharing in transport and logistics. Because now, of course, the systems of information sharing are working in silos. So the basic idea is to create a system which works similarly to internet, to connect only once, to use the services of the choice, and to cover all type of exchanges, business to business and business to administration. So in this sense, this will be also complementary to the regulation on EMSWE and FT. Of course, we need to ensure all the rules of cybersecurity, trust, governance, and so on. So all these elements are now being investigated by the DTLF. And the final report, including the technical specifications of this system, and also let's say, guidelines for individual users, are expected to be ready by 2022. This is my last word, and this is quite important also in the context of the future European data strategy, and in principle the European data spaces, which are now being created at the level of the EU economy, not only covering transport and logistics, but very many sectors of the EU economy, where the mobility and transport would be one of them. So that's it from my side. Thank you very much again for the invitation.
Yes, thank you very much, Simon. Thank you very much, Eleni. I think it was very interesting to hear. It's very connected to our DIP, and thank you very much for your support. I have one announcement. So for all our participants, for Eleni and Simon, it was not possible to come with a image to you, because their system did not allow for video screening, and only for call was the option. Therefore, so you only had the audio. But best greetings to them. But I have one question, I think, to Elena, because it was in her part, is what are the ultimate goal of CO2 reduction in the maritime area in million tons for the EU region within 2030 and within 2050? That was a question from one participant, and perhaps you can answer it short. Hello? Do you hear me?
Yes, now we had a problem again. So we heard, I heard the question. At this stage, we are not in a position to say some specific figures, but I think we can promise, we can say that we can promise to have more concrete results after our study. And
perhaps also after the preparatory work for EU Fuel and Maritime initiative, because this will be the main initiative driving the sustainability change in the maritime shipping. So we are working on the figures, and also I think there are some discussions in the ESSF. But we will come back. We will check again the targets of CO2 reduction in the context of all this initiative.
Okay, thank you very much. If you got the result, then we are very happy to get it too, and then we will also inform our stakeholders with this, because that is a very important. It was an important question. Thank you very much for the question, but it's also very important to get the definitely results. Thank you very much for your help, and thank you very much for joining us. If we have the chance at the end to have a little bit more time, then perhaps we can take also a question from the audience, and perhaps we can do it. But now I will take the next point. We all know without the CEF it will not work, and we are very happy that with INEA we have a very good institution which a very clear insight to the project. And for me, it's I'm very welcome Herbert Mink. He is team leader there, and for us, I can say thank you very much for your support. We get it also for this VIP. I think it was a very good cooperation, and I will know it will be also in the future. Thank you very much. So Everett will speak about the Innovation Network Executive Agency and their implementation, which had happened in the maritime sector in the past. Everett, you have the floor. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much, Professor Bodewijk, Silke, of course, Alexia, and his entire team in organizing this conference. Well, at INEA, we've just had a whole series of different corridor fora where for each of the corridor fora, we've created corridor reports. Part of that as well is essentially the maritime reports. So that's essentially what I'd like to talk to you a little bit about today. Now, Professor Bodewijk, you're in charge of course, the Motorways of the Sea portfolio. This is, if we look at the full maritime portfolio, this is the most important. We have 50 different actions which were selected. But indeed, we see that there's a whole series of different priorities which were selected under pre-identified projects, innovation, synergy, nodes. And that's essentially why for this corridor report, for the first time this year, we took it more broader. And we looked at the full scope of actions under this portfolio. And that's essentially why I'll first start with MOS, because it's essentially your portfolio. Couple of quick words, but that's basically actions which focused on the upgrading of maritime links, projects of wider benefits, and pilot actions. It's essentially your horizontal priority, which takes place in all of the 6 maritime basins. Type of actions, what are we financing here? That would be very traditionally the upgrade of maritime links, the upgrade of the ports in these links, including basic port infrastructure, passenger terminals, freight terminals, capital dredging, and sea access. Hinterland connections as well. Here we're talking about the improvement of roads, rail, and inland waterway connections. And what's particularly about MOS is the upgrade of the vessels on this link. So here we're talking very much on the benefits towards the environmental sector, emission abatement technologies, and innovative technologies on the vessel. Now, what's special about MOS is we're also financing wider benefit actions, projects with wider benefits, and these are actions which we can't link to a specific sector of the maritime link, where you have a project of maritime link. It's very clearly between two ports and we're upgrading that connection. Here we're talking about actions which benefit the so-called wider maritime community. And what we've done in the last 6 years, we financed LNG bunkering networks, especially in the Baltic Sea. We financed hydrographic surveying, or essentially these actions which try to increase a sea traffic management perspective. And then lastly, we also talked about, we've also financed pilot actions. Here, especially, we can see benefits with Synergia, with the Horizon 2020 program, because what purpose of a pilot action is essentially to test a new technology, a new innovative technology, and put this into operational conditions. These are 4 actions which were selected more in the 2014-2015 periods, but it's basically testing, for instance, new sulfur emission monitoring systems, electric propulsion systems on vessels, especially in 2014, the testing of scrubbers on vessels, and of course, the world's first retrofit of an LNG pilot dredger. So if I talk about what have we financed, well, we had the 151 actions. That basically means that we financed 1.6 billion euro in EU contributions, which was essentially 4.5 billion euro in investments in the maritime sector, so in the maritime ports or on the maritime links between these two ports. If we split it up and if we dig into these figures, we see that 60% of that was gone through the general envelope, 40% cohesion. And if you look at these two bar charts, funding and actually eligible cost, you see that cohesion member states were able to finance with a much higher co-financing rates. And that's what we see if we dig down into member states. That explains, for instance, why we have Poland, which is by far the country has received the most EU contributions. And if we look at red, which is Motorways of the Sea, it's essentially Finland and Sweden, which have been financed with more investments. Now, in the detailed implementation plan, Mr. Zabodovic looked at core network corridors. I see that something went wrong with the cell ranges. Apologies. But you can see that in funding figures, most of the funding went through the Baltic Sea, but then most of the other with approximately 50 actions, and all of the other core network, all of the other sea basins figured out between 25 and 30 actions in them. And that allows us to look at where the funding goes in the maritime ports. So unfortunately, I don't have the time to look at all the maritime ports in this presentation. It's essentially more of an overview of what's written in our corridor report, which was distributed to you already. It will be published on the 16th of April, 16th in July. But you can see that we've been able to allocate funding to every port, and each of the ports here, which are featured, receive EU funding in one of the actions. Lines in blue are, of course, the actions are upgrades of maritime links which took place in this maritime basin. So what can we learn from the Baltic Sea? We saw that 36 ports received EU funding for a total of 789 million in 52 actions. It's essentially showed that 14 maritime links were upgraded, with in particular Sweden and Finland having a leading connecting role. And maritime vessels sailing the routes between these ports were upgraded. And in terms of scrubbers, 13 scrubbers were piloted and installed. In terms of LNG retrofits, and in terms of 6 vessels where we installed electric propulsion. Poland, probably not seeable on the map, but the maritime funding was equally distributed amongst its core network ports. This was predominantly due to large railway hinterland installations and investments taking place in these ports. Bodevik also talked about, the diesel implementation plan also put emphasis on the alternative fuel network. We see that 7 maritime ports have invested in LNG bunkering in this basin, and also 3 bunkering vessels are being constructed. And then finally, that's essentially from the last call, we see that there's a focus on digitalization, especially digital registration of passengers as being trialed on the Turku in Stockholm, and also autonomous vehicles in the port of Gothenburg is being piloted at the moment by Volvo. And if you look at the report, you'll be able to see similar set of analysis in each of the basins where we take stock of what is being financed and how any investment is progressing. Now, if you look at same problem, but if you look at eligible costs on how this is being implemented, by 2020, about 75% of eligible costs will have been financed. So we're basically seeing that the maritime portfolio is in a very mature stage, and we're looking forward to its finalization. And indeed, if we look at the investments overall across all of the basins, we see that we're making, well, that the EU investments have made a contribution towards the environmental challenges of short sea shipping, particularly with the further rollout of short-side electricity, OPS, piloting of new technologies in LNG, that maritime operators have benefited with 26 maritime links upgraded. And other than that, there's quite an emphasis on the creation of basic port infrastructure and terminal developments in the ports. And then, of course, in the current, our outlook, what we see is that there is essentially now an uncertainty in our portfolio, particularly in view of COVID-19, which means that INEA will be taking a flexible approach, and we need to look at how the situation proceeds. And of course, we see that there's, of course, a greater need to continue to have investments to also not only improve the maritime basins, but also to link the maritime basins amongst themselves. Talked a little bit about pilot actions. This can be, of course, one example of how greater synergies can be created with the Horizon 2020 program. And of course, we see that there's an importance with the current focus on the Green Deal that we need further actions and further pilot actions in order to support these non-fossil fuel solutions. And indeed, digital solutions and smart solutions could also have great benefits to the priorities in the DIP. Thank you very much.
So now it works. Sorry, we had some problems with the communication. Thank you very much, Evan. I think it was really impressive to see what happened in the past, and we are thank you and your entire team for your work in the past. But we know there's a lot what we have to do in future, and therefore thank you very much. And I think in this EU presidency we will get the data for the MFF for the next multi-annual financial framework, and therefore that will be also a very important discussion about the future of that. Thank you very much for coming. Perhaps some question at the end, I'm not sure because we are a little bit out of time, but now I will open the roundtable discussion, shaping the policy of sustainable, smart and seamless European maritime space by representatives of ports, core ports, comprehensive ports, of shipping lines, of terminal operator. And I'm very happy to welcome Pekka Meronen, the CFO of the Port of Helsinki. He is presenting the view of the core port. I'm visiting you in November during the Arctic conference and see which very important projects are in your port, very impressive. The next will be Francesco Di Maio, the president of the Port of Civitavecchia. he's presenting the view of a comprehensive port. And I was visiting at the end of the summer and see this very well-functioning cooperation between the core and the comprehensive port. I think it was really a good example, which we can also use as an example, as a best case. Thank you very much for coming. The view of the shipping line will be presented by Rob Waterman. He's the CEO of the container ships. And he was also, as I remember, a speaker on the INEA workshop of financing maritime activities. And the last speaker that will be the representative of the view of the terminal operator is Declan Freeman, Managing Director of Oikon, and we met at the Arctic Sea Basin, I remember very well. So I think it's a great round. Thank you very much for all you to make it available to participate in this today's webinar. And now I will give the floor to Alexio, who will just moderate this round. Alexio, please.
Thanks a lot, Professor Bodevik. Well, again, good morning, and let's go for this roundtable. The idea, as anticipated by Professor Bodevik, is to have different stakeholders presenting their views. Specifically, due to the fact also that we are in a remote mode, we ask to our distinguished panelists to be short in their presentation, to be really focused, and to stay in 5 minutes to give let's say the really important elements in terms of the triple S, smart, sustainable, and seamless, and then to have also space for your questions. We are receiving many questions. I can even a little bit pre-answer to one of them, because it is true that one thing that we could add in this panel, and we did already in the previous workshop, is to have also the demand side represented. And specifically in one of the events we did last year, in the one in Dublin for Ireland connectivity, we had a couple of presentations on the demand side. But certainly this is true that we need to, and we are looking also to the demand side, meaning the logistic operators. In a way, shipping line they are, and also terminal operator, but also the real demand is the one that is owning the cargo. So let's start to do that. And first, the view of a core port. So I leave the floor to Pekka Meronen, that is the CFO of the Port of Helsinki. And this, Mr. Meronen, the floor is yours.
Okay, hello everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So ladies and gentlemen, dear organizers, Mr. Kurt Bodevik, thank you for this opportunity from the Port of Helsinki to be sharing our thoughts on this issue today. And I've prepared a couple of slides that we can go through, and after that we will have the discussion. So first of all, to put Port of Helsinki on the map here, we are in south coast of Finland, creating mobility and value sustainably. That's our kind of a mission. And some basic figures: we do cargo handling about 15 million tons a year, and then of that is unitized cargo about 12 million tons a year, and containers 500,000 TEUs a year. But then also on the passenger side, we have quite a lot of traffic. So we have about 12 million passengers on the liner traffic, and then on the international cruise traffic about 600,000 passengers a year. So this is just to put us on the map here. So then a view from core port on Motorways of the Seas, on the sustainability view first. I think we all know that the environmental issues are of growing concern, have been quite a long time already. and they need to be solved somehow. And we as a maritime players, we are part of this first problem, and I think now more or less the solution then. So this is about the Green Deal and especially about the carbon neutrality. So as our own target, Port of Helsinki will reach the carbon neutrality by the end of 2035. And all this involves a lot of investments in order to achieve it faster than normal renewal would provide. The EU grants play a significant role as a catalyst in this process. So what this means is that the normal investing rate would not be fast enough. So we need to speed it up with something, and of course the EU grants would play a major role in this. So what we've done in Port of Helsinki, we've implemented this new LNG vessels on Moss Road. This is done by shipping company Tallink so far, and we've been providing as ports the facility to bunker them with LNG also. So this is for the Motorways of the Seas route in Helsinki-Tallinn. Then we have been implementing this onshore power supply infrastructure on Helsinki-Tallinn route as a part of the Twin Port projects as well. And at the moment we have, I think we have 5 OPS systems on constructions or on designing, so they are on the process. So then what we've done also has been the auto-mooring equipment on this Moss Road Helsinki-Tallinn. We've implemented this for 2 ships so far, and now we are implementing it for the second 2 ships in the end of February. So then we will have 4 ships using this auto-mooring equipment, and this is in order to save also time on the turnaround, so it enables the ships to sail a bit slower and thereby pollute less. So the OPS investment is also scheduled for the Helsinki-Lübeck route, which is Hansalink we call it, and will be implemented in the forthcoming years. But there is still a lot of potential to improve sustainability by Moss funding in the present situation as well as in the future. So at the moment we have 3 shipping companies and 8 vessels on the road from Helsinki to Tallinn, carrying around 9 million passengers and 4 million tons of cargo. So we've done a lot, but there is still a lot to do. And in the future we will see how the Rail Baltica probably will do some change in this business models as well as the environmental impacts, and there is a possibility to encourage model shift from road to rail also in this sense. So this would be possible maybe via this Motorways of the Seas extension on Helsinki-Tallinn as a part of the Rail Baltica. So then when we look at this from the core port view, smart and seamless side, we have this idea also that the cargo and people flow should be smooth. So this affects mobility, customer experience, as well as environmental impact and efficiency. So we think that seamless means better connections, saved resources and higher productivity. So the smart port is a way to reach these goals by implementing the automatic check-in process, for example, as well as gate systems and different kind of optimization solutions. So we are at the moment in the process of finalizing our check-in processes for the Helsinki-Tallinn for cargo and passengers, which includes also the passenger vehicles, and new gate systems also are designed for Helsinki-Lübeck cargo, which is the part of our optimization project in cargo port of Vuosaari. And also in this smart and seamless part, there is still a lot of potential to improve these cargo and passenger flows by mass funding. And when I look at the biggest issues in Port of Helsinki, there is some bottleneck targets. For example, the connection to core network in hinterland from port. So this is something to have a look when defining these eligible targets, that also the hinterland connections plays a huge role in making the whole logistic chains to operate seamless and smooth. So of course also process automation and digitalization is a part of the everyday doing in Port of Helsinki, as well as of course in any other port or any other company. So that was actually, in short, I was asked to keep it in 5 minutes. I'm not sure if I managed it, but if I showed just one more slide here, this is the way we kind of see what we are and what we are doing. So our vision is to be the world's most functional port, and the mission, how we do it, is we create mobility and value, and we do it sustainably. So then our values are social responsibility, cooperation, and effectiveness. And we do this development through these six kind of spearhead projects, and that includes city port functionality, seamless passenger experience, our workers that are enthusiastic and skilled, and then profitable growth, and efficient port operations, as well as pioneering in the sustainable development. But maybe this is enough from my side so far, so I would be glad to give the floor to the next speaker then. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Meronen. I think you got it. I mean, in 5 minutes, you gave a clear picture on how the Port of Helsinki is tackling the different pillars, and also, of course, covering a bit the priorities already mentioned in my presentation, but also with some new parts. I pick just the one on the gate automation at ports. That is a part of the, in a way, seamless and smart, this digitalization, this connectivity, but still it's something in which a lot of progress could be done in the different ports in Europe. So thanks a lot. We now pass the floor to the second speaker, and to have the view of the comprehensive port in this respect, but let me say relevant comprehensive port, being a port quite based on motorway of the sea and short sea shipping routes. So I pass the floor to the president of the port, the Porti di Roma del Lazio, the port of Civitavecchia specifically. So Mr. Francesco Maria Di Maio, the floor is yours. Is everything okay with the micro? Luca and Francesco? We cannot hear you.
Okay, we can see you now. Okay. President Di Maio, you are online. We see you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You can start your presentation.
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank the organizer and also Mr. Bodevik for this the opportunity to give us also to present again this project and our idea about the future of the motorways of the sea. I would like to thank in particular Mr. Bodevik for the draft of this European for the detailed implementation plan, in which I found very interesting ideas regarding the future of the motorways of the sea, in particular also in respect of the effects derived from the COVID-19 crisis, which has been outlined also in the forwards by the European coordinator. I would like also to thank Mr. Bodevik for his words regarding the project, ongoing project between Civitavecchia, the port of Civitavecchia, and the port of Barcelona, which is, as Mr. Bodevik has stressed, one of the best cases in this sector, which we are now in the implementation phase regarding the construction of our pier, and we supposed to finalize this building by the end of this year, and it could be in operational at the beginning of next year. Regarding now, I come to my presentation. So I will go to. Okay, if you can go to the first slide. Okay, the first slide. I have suggested some ideas for how to developing the motorways of the sea. Apart of the fact that motorways of the sea should not only focus on port-to-port connection, but also to include connection to hinterland, we think that a good course of action in order to foster the motorways of the sea is also to abandon, in a certain way, the distinction between core and comprehensive ports when we are dealing, of course, with EU projects, in the sense that we can have access to project of motorways of the sea, even if we are two ports of a comprehensive network, and not only core and comprehensive as it was, for instance, in our case with Barcelona. And we think also that it could be also important to include as in the possibility to have access to motorways of the sea funds, also the connection between ports of the same member states, and not and to overcome a little bit this criteria that should be ports of two different states. This is also extremely important in this period where we are witnessing a huge reduction of maritime traffic due to the COVID-19. So if we would like to encourage the modal shift from road to sea, we have also to, in this period in particular, we should enlarge the possibility to obtain funding from the European Union also to projects which are related to ports on the same member state, and in order also to make possible the new start of a new maritime traffic that in this period, especially in Civitavecchia, has been extremely jeopardized by the COVID. I would like just to mention that in our port we have witnessing reduction which are around 75% if we are speaking about for instance connection with the island for ferries. But if we are speaking on cruise, Civitavecchia as other ports in the Mediterranean, we are witnessing reduction of almost 100%, because there are still some ban regarding the maritime connection in the cruise sector. Therefore, the second slide, we think it is also very important to foster and to underline the fact that motorways over sea are a crucial part of the TEN-T network, as also has been stressed in the detailed implementation plan, and there is a functional maritime junction between the major nodes and the core and comprehensive network, and that should be seen as an integral part of the TEN-T and its corridors. But again, here we think that the fact that we have to increase the maritime dimension of this sector must also consider the possibility to have the connection between two ports of the comprehensive network and two ports also of the same member states. The other point is to simplify the requirement for the motorways over sea calls in order to utilize its full potential. We are witnessing certain difficulties in the requirements which are requested, which are provided for in the project, and we deem that it would be maybe important to assess these requirements for these motorways over sea calls. Finally, we deem also important to create a working group composed by EC officers, port authorities and shipping lines representative, in order to identify the most appropriate requirements for the future motorways calls. And again, here I think it would be very important, as has been also underlined in the forward by European coordinator. It's very important to see, to analyze also the future possible reorientation of the priorities of the worker plan in view of the COVID-19 crisis. So we are, of course, fully available to examine also this impact of the COVID, as we have very, very high consequences in this sport. So we can also provide certain some examples how to overcome this crisis. I think so. I finish my presentation. Of course, I'm available to answer of any kinds of questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Di Maio, with your, let's say, perspective from a comprehensive port with a slightly different angle that you used to present this to the audience. So we move now to our third speaker, and we go now to a shipping line. So I leave the floor to Mr. Rob Waterman, that is the CIO of container ships. So Mr. Waterman, the floor is yours.
Good morning to everyone. Can I just check you can hear me okay?
Yes, it's fine.
Excellent. Okay. Good morning to everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you all this morning. Next slide, please. Okay. While I have the opportunity to talk to you from a shipping line perspective, really importantly to highlight that while of course we are involved in maritime transportation, we actually view ourselves as a fully integrated multimodal logistics provider, okay? And that's super important, and that will be a core theme that I refer back to through my presentation, okay? Our value proposition is heavily driven by a focus on sustainability and reliability on the door-to-door piece of the European supply chain. I'm showing here just a very quick introduction to our group. Okay, so we have in the region of 1,200 employees located across Europe, offering these integrated door-to-door multimodal supply chain solutions from Russia right the way down to North Africa. We are part of the larger, wider French-based CMA CGM group and organization, However, container ships is positioned as a European specialist, a regional specialist, and we are very positive and optimistic about the future growth and demand for transportation solutions in Europe, particularly in the post-COVID situation, where many of our customers are talking about more focus on regional trade and regional business. I mentioned that sustainability is at the heart of everything that we do because we are competing against the trucking sector. So our focus is to move cargo onto the rail network and connect that to our maritime solutions. Next slide, please. Okay, while I am emphasizing the door-to-door element of our transportation, I would like to touch on the fact, of course, that we are working and we are benefiting from an excellent collaboration and support with the EU under the previous door-to-LNG scope. And with the support of the EU, we have been able to introduce 4 LNG-fueled container vessels into our extensive maritime network. Now, LNG is a way of significantly reducing emissions. So by replacing a vessel fueled by typical diesel with LNG, that generates between 45 to 60% fewer greenhouse gas emissions. As well as the 4 vessels that we currently have on service, we do have a further 2 additional vessels on order, which will become integrated into our maritime network. Under the door-to-LNG scope, it's also worth highlighting that a number of our port partners have also benefited from investment in their terminal infrastructure, which has been super important to ensure the efficiency and fast handling of our vessels as and when they are calling at the container terminals to avoid unnecessary delays. And that's really important for us when you remember that our core competition is against the trucking segment. Okay, next slide, please. This is actually my final slide, but I think it's the most important slide that I'm presenting because it really does bring us back to this idea that we are offering door-to-door supply chain solutions. So in terms of how we can further move towards sustainable, seamless, and smart European maritime space, we think it's super important that we all do consider the landside logistics part, as that is an integral part of our offer to our customers. If we could focus on the left-hand side of the slide, here we're introducing the concept of what we refer to as our 5-step solution focused on sustainable modes of transport. Okay, so we are looking at utilizing trucks only for the first mile and the final mile part of the supply chain. Okay, so we're looking at short initial collections by truck, ideally trucks that are utilizing biofuel or e-trucks, to then connect with the rail network to ensure that we're then moving containers on the rail network, not large distances over the road, to then connect with our LNG vessels, okay, to then do the maritime piece of the transportation supply chain, for final onward delivery, again, where possible via the train network, with that final piece of delivery but via biofuel or e-truck solutions. So we must consider that integrated piece, and we feel we must continue to focus on the use of the rail network to then complement and gel in nicely with the maritime solutions that we're able to offer the market and to the customers. So how and where do we think that we can work closer and the EU can help support this? So firstly, we feel there's opportunities to provide economic support for the further development of new markets with multimodal solutions. To provide maritime solutions, we do need a certain economy of scale to make it viable to deploy new maritime solutions. So there is an opportunity for further economic support to the high development corridors that exist. We're constantly talking about sustainability with our customers. However, we do find that the majority of shippers, while they are interested in making that switch, the challenge we have is to actually persuade them to pay more to make that switch. And we still, many shippers do have an understandable, perhaps, but an understandable focus on cost and bottom line. So we do think there is opportunities for the EU to help us encourage shippers to make that switch. As touched on earlier by the excellent presentations on the port sector, we need to continually focus on simplifying administrative procedures, particularly in and out of ports, bearing in mind that we are competing with the trucking segment, and reliability is a key part to enable us to convince our shippers to switch mode to a more environmentally friendly and sustainable solution. And finally, we also think there's opportunities to tailor or really focus investment opportunities on segments that generate significant savings in emission. We think there are opportunities here to really help persuade shippers to make that switch. So if I can summarize, okay, the presentation, the focus we believe on Motorways of the Sea is to consider that end-to-end piece. We have demonstrated really well how working with the EU enables the deployment of LNG technologies on that maritime piece. But for sure, we do think there's opportunities to really push further to develop landside corridors with that ultimate goal of making maximum use of rail and maritime to take trucks off our already congested road networks and to reduce emissions and to improve the environment. Thank you. That concludes my presentation.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Waterman. It was really inspiring, and specifically, I really like this picture with the integrated logistic chain with the maritime transport pillar in between. And because in a way it is summarizing, the three pillars really, because there is a sustainability part in the way you use alternative fuels, there is the connectivity between modes, and of course there is the smart being the all digitalization processes and flows that are needed in order to make this really effective. Okay, so that was really great. Thanks. So we now go to the last, but of course not least, presentation, meaning the view of a container or terminal operator. And in this respect, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Declan Freeman, that is the Managing Director of Yukon. And then, Mr. Freeman, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alexio. Can you? Good morning, Alexio and Mr. Bodewijk. Yeah, you can see the screen there and can hear me clearly?
Perfectly.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present. Morning, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the Managing Director of the Irish Continental Group Container and Terminal Division. And what I'm going to try and do here is give you a view of the role a terminal operator has in fostering sustainable, smart and seamless maritime space. First, I'll just set the scene in relation to the business units within the group. Within the group, we have two divisions. We have got our ferries division, which is a leading ferry company operating between the UK and continents, and we're transporting passenger cars and roll-on and roll-off freight. And then we've got the container and terminal division, and within that we have three brand names. We've got Yukon, which is one of the leading container operators, low between North Continent and Ireland. And we've got two container terminals under the brand Dublin Ferryport Terminals, DFT, and Belfast Container Terminal, BCT. The group is the largest maritime group in the Republic of Ireland, and a turnover in 2019 of 357 million. Since 1992, when ICG took over BNI Line, ICG has invested over €1 billion in vessels and terminals in striving to improve the connectivity between Ireland and the North Continent. Irish Ferries carries more than half of the Irish Sea passengers and 30% of all the roll-on, roll-off freight. Yukon would have a 31% share of the Lolo market on and off the island of Ireland. And I guess more focus for this presentation would be our terminal activities in Dublin and Belfast. And between both terminals, we are carrying about 46% of all the Lolo units moved on and off the island of Ireland. So the next slide just quickly shows our route map connecting Rotterdam and Antwerp and the strategic location of our terminals in Dublin and Belfast. I guess, it's very important with the peripheral location of Ireland in relation to the EU that we have to maintain excellent connectivity with the rest of the European Union and also with worldwide markets. So shipping and terminal activities are key activities in that regard in Ireland. Moving on to the next slide, looking at the focus on DFT and BCT. In both DFT and BCT now, we're currently undertaking significant investments, which is going to shape the policy of our container terminal operations for the next 20 years. Looking at the lifts in DFT, last year we did 191,000 lifts in DFT. We operate 3 ship-to-shore cranes and 12 rubber-tired gantries. Our current capacity there is 220,000 units, and we plan to extend that to 300,000 units over the next 2 phases of development of the terminal. BCT, our annual throughput was 130,000 units, and there are plans in place there and underway, significantly underway, to increase the capacity there to 200,000 units. Belfast Harbour Commissioners have undertaken a £40 million expansion plan and have purchased 2 ship-to-shore cranes, 8 RTGs and 4 RTG stacks. We adopt a common approach in both the terminals in relation to the layout and the type of handling equipment that we're using. And I guess a particular reference for this presentation is the interface with road transport and the last mile, which you see is very, very important. For the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to focus on the yard handling aspects of both terminals and our deployment of the Kalmar E1 zero emission RTG. These RTGs are driven remotely and are capable of automatic stack moves. In the last 24 months, we've taken delivery of 4 RTGs in DFT and 8 RTGs in BCT. You can see in the bottom left-hand side of the presentation, the RTGs arriving in DFT fully erect, and also in BCT on the right-hand side of the presentation, the RTGs arriving there as well. We believe the integration of these RTGs into our operations will result in sustainable, smart, and a seamless service to our customers. Just to give you a flavour of where we are, I'm going to focus on DFT. You can see in the next slide here where DFT is in relation to the city of Dublin. As you can see, it's truly a city, a port in a city. And DFT is ideally located to the port tunnel entrance, which is about 1 kilometre from the terminal, and it connects us greatly with the main road networks going north, south, and west from Dublin. As you can see from the view there, we're quite limited in relation to the space we have on the terminal. So really, our choice is the RTG machine to maximise stack heights, and along with managing dwell times on the terminal, helps us to push as much throughput through the terminal as possible. If you look at the picture on the top right-hand side of this slide, you can see the box, a yellow box, and within that area is the area where we've deployed these first 4 remote control Kalmar E1 machines, which are remote control and semi-automated. We see these machines as sustainable and machines for the future. They maximise the throughput by reducing the focus on dwell time. These machines also, we're moving from diesel machines to all electric machines, which is very important from a sustainability point of view. It's going to eliminate 90% of all CO2 emissions and all NOx emissions. To give you an idea, one of our old RTG machines, which was powered by diesel, would use about 1,300 litres of diesel a week. And we convert those RTGs into 8 electric RTGs, it will reduce the equivalent of CO2 emissions by 1.5 million kilograms of CO2 per annum. The all-electric machines also have soft landing technology deployed on the RTGs, which will reduce noise to negligible levels, which is obviously very important if you look at the environment in which we're operating in DFT. From an efficiency perspective, the RTGs are remotely operated from the back office. The stack moves are automated, and the manual moves to and from road transport are done by the operator in manual mode. We've seen significant improvements in the health and safety and the work environment. We've reduced movement of operatives on the terminal, better working environment, and also it's very easy to train up a new driver on one of these machines, and it gives us access to a wider labor pool. You can see the picture of the terminal operator in the back office, and basically from this desk, he's operating 4 machines. He can operate 4 machines in the yard at one time. Looking at some smart aspects, which is one of the themes also, what's smart about what we're trying to do here. Our RTGs are fully integrated into our terminal operating system, our vehicle booking system, and our automatic gates. Basically, we can see that these changes are going to bring substantial improvements in the supply chain, and will allow for a timely and accurate supply of information, creating a seamless connection with the last mile for all users. The big challenge for us, I suppose, from the point of view of moving these investments forward, is that we're replacing RTG machines, diesel machines that are not end of life. So we have to wait for machines to reach end of life before we can accelerate the program. And in that regard, I guess, from a funding perspective, it may be interesting that if funding was available to try and accelerate these plans, which are leading to more environmentally sustainable and seamless operations, it can only be good for the overall supply chain. We're strongly of the view that these developments are shaping present and future terminal operations in a truly sustainable, seamless and a smart manner, which are some of the main objectives of the detailed implementation plan of the MOS. Thank you for your time.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Freeman. You gave us, again, a different perspective, and there are a few things that I can pick just as a wrap up. One that is the one about the sustainability that should be followed also when you have to choose a specific crane, RPG in your case. And the other one is the city relation, the port-city relation. It is very important to take this into account in terms of noise, in terms of pollution, because the situation of the port of Dublin is, of course, not the only one in Europe. So I thank all the speakers. We go now to the Q&A session. I would kindly ask the speakers. I know that probably Mr. Waterman has some time constraints, so he probably could leave us now. But anyhow, I ask the 3 other speakers to stay on stage with me, meaning that they should switch on their camera, but only switch on their micro when they answer, in order to limit the background noise. So in terms of Q&A, first I need really to thank you, because we have received so many questions during the last hour. Some of them have been already answered in the chat. We reserve to answer to some others later on, and we received also some comments more. And one of the comments we received is that at the very beginning of the event, someone could not really recognize me because I was without the glasses. And okay, it was a little bit strange because I'm home now, but okay, anyhow, maybe you can recognize me better now with the glasses. And we go now to the Q&A. We have one really specific question for the panelists, meaning that is a very, very short answer, because you have been dealing with a smart, sustainable, and seamless motorway of the sea from your perspective. But think about the possibility to be in a position that you have only one investment that you could do in the next year for whatever reason. You have only one, a certain amount of money, and you say, okay, but you could do only one, and you have quoted many, of course. If you have to go for the first one, say, okay, this is really the key part, and many others are important, but this is the key one. So which one, which investment would you like to go for, and why? So I need from you really a short answer. let's follow the same order of the presentation. So the first answer is for Mr. Merone Ortovansky. Which investment and why?
Thanks for the question. I think it's not fair to ask a question like that because we have so many different customers, so many harbors, so we have so many different needs for the investment. So this is just not fair. But I will try. I will try to answer, and I can put it in a way of maybe in the spend or also in the value way. But if I look at the way of the values, it would most definitely be the Green Deal related investments. But then when I look at purely on the value and the money spent, I'd say it probably would be because we have a big needs for the connection of the port facilities to the core networks. So that would probably be then it. But it's not a fair question, I have to say. But thanks.
It's a little bit provocative, of course, you know, that's in order to see, I mean, if you have to judge the one, you have to pick one. That's the part of the game, let's say. So, Mr. Di Maio, which one for you and why?
Yes, I think one project that could be important, especially now in this period COVID-19, because I'm sorry, I'm stressed again at this point because it's very important to understand the impact of the COVID on the maritime sector. I think that it could be important to foster the digitalization process on transport, but in transport, intermodal transport in a way that could be efficient. The connection between the ports, the transport from the ports to the final destination. In this respect, I think it's also very important, also looking to the consequence of the COVID. In this case, I would say positive consequence, because we have seen how much the environment has changed in these last 3 months, especially in Italy, because we reduce the transport, the road transport, for instance. And so in this case, we would be good, for instance, to foster the short distance between the ports and the final destination, in view of reducing the emissions on the air and in general the impact, the so-called negative aspects, externalities that we know that we have in the transport, the decongestions on the road, etc., etc. We are in this respect. I would like also to mention that we are working with the region Lazio, which is the region which Civitavecchia and the other ports of this of my jurisdiction are part. We are working with the region in order to foster this short transport in a view of reducing the environmental impact of the transport, of the road transport. Also fostering the railway transport. We are now working on a new project that has been also gained a contribution of the European Union for the railway last miles connection in the port. Thanks to the European Commission, we will have around 4 million contribution grant for this project. And these two ways, reducing the distance from the port to the final destination and fostering also the railway means in order to reach, for instance, Rome, the capital, I think there are very good examples of how to invest in efficient way in environmental also perspective funds of the European Union. Of course, I mentioned the digitalization because digitalization has now a very important role, especially because, as you know, the clients, consumer are much more using e-commerce, and they use also the way to reach and the time of reaching the final destination is becoming very important. So the supply chain aspect are very important also in this aspect. So we think that this could be for us a very important project to support, also obtaining European funds.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Di Maio. As anticipated, Mr. Waterman had to leave, so I leave the floor now for the last answer to Mr. Freeman.
Yes, thanks, Alexio. I think I touched on it in my presentation. If money was available, what we would try and do is accelerate the replacement program for the existing machines that we have. We're operating some older machines in the yard, which are diesel generating machines, generating CO2 emissions. And if funds were available, you would accelerate the process of replacing those machines and bringing them in more environmentally friendly and efficient machines, as we have done already. So we bought in 4 machines, and we supplement that with adding basically to what we believe is the right approach and bringing in these more environmentally friendly machines onto the terminal.
Thanks a lot. Very, very clear. Thanks again to our speakers and panelists. We are perfectly in time, really. That's great. So I think we could have still one question for the coordinator, and then it's also the occasion to ask this question to the coordinator and leave again the floor to Professor Bodevik to wrap up and close. So the question is about financing, because at the very beginning I explained a little bit that the DIP is also linked to a financing mix. So a question coming is about the relevance of the different and various EU investment instruments and schemes like a self-planning facility and others foremost. So I leave the floor to Professor Bodevik to answer to this and also to close the event. The floor is yours, Mr. Professor Bodevik.
This is it. Microphone, we don't hear you.
Okay,
No,
Prof.
no,
Bodevik, you're in. Yeah, working. Please go on.
Okay, so I start again. Yes, as I said before, money makes the world go round. So the DIP needs a functioning MFF with a budget for CEF. That is the real point. That is one case which will start later. At first, I want to say thank you very much for all your input. We have something like a working group for the call. It's a CEF committee where the member states are involved. But what we try to do is before calls to find groups which coming together to find good projects which are exceptional for some different tasks. That is what we can do and what we will do. And what I see by the last proposals, we had just working groups or cooperating groups in sea basins or between existing good working structures between ports, and that is the real way. And then with good proposals, then we have also the chance to find just with CEF the financing structure for this. I also would say thank you very much. You gave a lot of good proposals and requirements, what we can do to force it. One point I have to say is that is something which we are working just now. It's a COVID-19 crisis, because we don't know how the recovery process will work in future. And that is what we have to do. Next week I have a video conference to only this problematic situation. What can we do? Can MOSC, can TEN-T with supported by CEF, can it be a helpful stone in this recovery process? What can we do? Therefore, we need, where are the problems? And what I've seen, we have a chat which is on high speed. We had a lot of questions and we try to answer all these questions. We try to find a platform for this, because it is existential questions which are answered by our participants during this webinar event which we have today. I will say some words. MOS extension, that is one what we try to do. It's just the instrument, it's just a new structure of the goals, sustainable, seamless and smart, which all with instrument which we can work on it. Therefore, we need a discussion structure to take the next revision of the DIP with a long-term perspective, which include also what will happen with the recovery process. What I want to say is we have a good chance, because now the discussion about the TEN-T revision is ongoing, and we have to take a strong voice in this process. And therefore, all the participants of today, but also the speaker, also the maritime stakeholders, I will invite to come in this process to say what is necessary, like the question, what can we do perhaps between two comprehensive ports, not only with core and comprehensive, and such question will be on the table in this. And the other is, what is the new map for this? And how will be the landside corridors? And that's what I say. I was a coordinator, European coordinator of landside corridors, Baltic Adriatic, and I know how important it is to connect the ports with the landside corridors, with the hinterland structures, with a multimodal concept for this. And that is what we can to do. We have a lot of questions about the green goals of the goals of the Green Deal until 2050. That is what we are open. Thank you very much to our representatives of the Maritime Directorate. They will give us, if the study is ready and the results will be fixed. And also to you all are invited to go this, to join this way, what we try to do. A real European maritime space, that is what we try to do. Not only corridors which are working, we will also connect. And the one important goal is to shift from road to short sea shipping, to inland waterways, to rail, to sustainable transport schemes. And that is one red line. You can read it through the whole DIP. And therefore, we are very open for this. And what I can say to all the participants, to the panelists, to the speakers, and to the member states, we are in a process, and we have good chances. There are huge challenges like COVID crisis, but we have also the chances like recovery process, and that is what we try to use. And therefore, thank you very much to you all for participating today in an active role, but also in the role of a participant which was interacting with chat with us. And what I can say, we are on the way. Join us. We need the support. We need your proposals, your requirements. And then I would say, have a nice summer break. And after summer, we will start again full speed. Thank you very much for being today here in the webinar. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Yes, thank you very much. And also I will thank you to my team. Good work, fantastic work. And we all need a little bit of time now to relax. But next week, the next video conference will work. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.